I still remember the sound my cufflink made when it hit the marble floor of the Grand Meridian Ballroom. A tiny, metallic ping that somehow cut through the noise of 130 wedding guests chattering and laughing around me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I ended up standing there, my cheek burning hot, my vision blurred with tears. I refused to let fall, while my son's bride stood in front of me, with her hand still raised. The evening had started beautifully. The ballroom was decorated with white roses and golden lights that made everything look like a fairy tale. I wore my best navy suit, the one I'd bought specifically for this day. My late wife's photo sat in my wallet because I couldn't bear to leave it at home. Thomas, my only son, looked so handsome in his black tuxedo. For a moment, watching him stand at the altar, I forgot all the tension from the past few months. I forgot the uncomfortable conversations and the strange requests. I just saw my boy, all grown up, starting his own life. The ceremony was perfect. Veronica looked stunning in her white gown, and when they said their vows, I cried happy tears, like any father would. My brother stood beside me, squeezing my shoulder, and everything felt right with the world. The reception started at 6 o'clock. The food was excellent, the music was lovely, and I danced with my sister-in-law and a few old friends. I avoided Thomas and Veronica for most of the evening, giving them space to enjoy their special day. I positioned myself near the gift table, smiling at guests, accepting congratulations for raising such a wonderful son. That's when I saw them approaching, Thomas and Veronica, walking toward me through the crowd. Something about the way they moved made my stomach clench. Thomas looked nervous, his eyes darting around like he was looking for an escape route. Veronica had this bright, determined smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. "Robert," Veronica said loudly as they reached me. Too loudly. Several nearby guests turned to look. "We need to talk to you about something important." I smiled politely, though my heart was already racing. "Of course, dear. Is everything all right?" "Everything's wonderful," she said, and her voice had this sharp edge to it that I'd never heard before. "In fact, things are about to get even better. Thomas and I have been discussing our living arrangements, and we've made a decision." Thomas shifted uncomfortably beside her but said nothing. More guests were watching now, sensing something was happening. "We're going to need your apartment keys," Veronica continued, holding out her hand like she was asking for a dinner roll. "We'll be moving in next Wednesday. That gives you almost a week to pack your things and find somewhere else to live. There are some lovely retirement communities outside the city, much more appropriate for an elderly man living all alone." The ballroom seemed to tilt sideways. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. Surely she couldn't be serious. Surely my son wouldn't stand there and let her say these things. "Excuse me?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Your apartment, Robert. It has 3 bedrooms, a renovated kitchen, and it's in a prime location. Thomas and I need space to start our family. You're just one person rattling around in all that space. It's really the most logical solution." She said it like she was explaining basic math to a child. I looked at Thomas, waiting for him to say something, to tell her she was being ridiculous, but he just stood there, staring at his shoes, his face red. "That's my home," I said, my voice stronger now. "I worked for 35 years to buy that apartment. Every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall, every memory of my wife is in that home. I'm not giving you my keys, Veronica. I'm not leaving." Her smile vanished. The mask dropped so fast it was shocking. "Don't be selfish," she hissed. "We're young. We need that space. You're just being a difficult old man who can't let go of his son." "I raised him in that apartment," I said, my hands trembling now. "I buried my wife and grieved in that apartment. It's mine." The answer is no. What happened next occurred so fast that I didn't have time to protect myself. Veronica's hand flew through the air and connected with my face with a crack that echoed through the ballroom. Pain exploded across my cheek. My cufflink flew off and bounced across the floor. The entire room went silent. 130 people stared at us. At me, holding my burning face. At Veronica, her hands still raised, her chest heaving with rage. At Thomas, frozen like a statue, his mouth hanging open. I picked up my jacket with shaking hands. I looked at my son one last time, hoping he would finally say something, do something. But he just stood there. So I turned and walked out. 3 months earlier, I was standing in my kitchen preparing steak when Thomas called to say he was bringing someone special to dinner. My heart jumped with excitement. My son had been single for so long, focusing on his career, that I'd worried he might never find someone. "Her name is Veronica, Dad. I really think you're going to love her," he said, and I could hear the happiness in his voice. That was all I needed to hear. I set the table with my good dishes, the set my wife and I received as a wedding gift 40 years ago. I put fresh flowers in a vase and made sure the apartment looked perfect. When the doorbell rang at 7 o'clock, I straightened my collar and opened the door with a warm smile. Veronica was beautiful, tall and slim, with dark hair styled in loose waves and a smile that lit up her whole face. She held out a bottle of wine and a small gift bag. "Mr. Robert, it's such an honor to finally meet you," she said, giving me a warm hug. "Thomas talks about you constantly. I feel like I already know you." We sat in the living room before dinner, and Veronica asked me questions about my late wife, about how I raised Thomas as a single father after she passed, about my years working as an engineer. She listened intently, made thoughtful comments, and laughed at my stories. Thomas watched us with this proud, relieved expression that made my heart swell. "This apartment is absolutely gorgeous," Veronica said as we moved to the dining room. "You have such wonderful taste. And 3 bedrooms? That's amazing. Thank you, dear. My wife and I saved for years to buy this place. We wanted Thomas to have a real home, not just a rental." Dinner went beautifully. Veronica complimented my cooking, helped clear the dishes, and seemed genuinely interested in our family photos. When they left that night, I hugged them both and told Thomas I was happy for him. I meant it with my whole heart. 2 weeks later, Thomas asked if he could bring Veronica by to show her the apartment properly during the daytime. "She's in real estate, Dad. She'd love to see the place in natural light. She's really interested in the renovation work you had done." I agreed immediately, proud to show off the home I'd worked so hard to create. They arrived on a Saturday morning, and I gave them a complete tour. Veronica walked through each room slowly, running her hands along the walls, examining the crown molding, testing the water pressure in the bathroom sink. "The kitchen renovation must have cost a fortune," she said, opening and closing the cabinet doors. "These are custom, aren't they?" "Yes, I had them done 5 years ago. It was expensive, but I'd been saving up." She moved to the spare bedrooms, spending a long time in each one. "So much wasted space," she murmured, and something about the way she said it made my skin prickle. But then she turned and smiled at me. "I just mean, it must feel lonely sometimes, being here all by yourself." "I like the space," I said quietly. "It doesn't feel empty to me. It feels full of memories." "Of course," Veronica said quickly. "I didn't mean anything by it." But as they were leaving, I heard her whisper to Thomas in the hallway, "3 bedrooms in this location? Do you know what this place is worth? It's perfect for us." I stood frozen in my kitchen, my blood running cold. A month later, Thomas and Veronica announced their engagement at a family dinner. Everyone celebrated, and I pushed my concerns aside. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then the comments started. Little things, dropped casually into conversations. "Rent is so expensive these days. Thomas's apartment is barely big enough for 1 person, let alone 2. We really need to think about our future, about starting a family." Each comment felt like a tiny needle prick, and I felt them all adding up. One evening, I stopped by Thomas's apartment unannounced to drop off some leftovers. The door was slightly open, and I heard Veronica on the phone. "Don't worry, baby," she was saying. "He's old and alone in that big apartment. He'll understand it makes sense for him to downsize. We just need to be patient. Once we're married, We'll sit him down and explain it to him. He'll see reason. And if he doesn't, well, we'll figure something out. I stood in that hallway for a full minute, the container of food growing heavy in my hands. My son's voice responded, too quiet for me to hear the words, but he didn't sound like he was disagreeing. I left the food by the door and went home, my mind spinning with worry and disbelief. The wedding was only 9 days away when they showed up at my apartment for what Thomas called just a casual dinner. I'd grilled chicken and vegetables, set 3 places at the table, and tried to ignore the anxiety that had been building in my chest for weeks. They arrived together, but something was different. Veronica carried a large tote bag that she set down on my coffee table with a heavy thump. Thomas wouldn't meet my eyes. "Before we eat, Dad, we wanted to talk to you about something," Thomas said, his voice strained. "Of course, son. Sit down." But they didn't sit. Veronica opened the tote bag and started pulling out papers, glossy brochures with pictures of smiling elderly people, printed articles with headlines about downsizing and senior living, statistics highlighted in yellow marker. "Robert, we've been doing a lot of research," Veronica said, spreading the materials across my coffee table like a presentation. "Did you know that 70% of seniors over 60 report feeling happier after moving to smaller, more manageable spaces? And look at these retirement communities. They have activities, healthcare services right on site, social programs." I stared at the papers, then at her, then at my son. "What is this?" "We're trying to help you, Dad," Thomas said weakly. "We know this apartment is a lot to maintain. The cleaning, the bills, the upkeep. I manage just fine, but you don't have to manage alone," Veronica interrupted, her voice taking on that sharp edge I'd heard at the wedding. "Thomas and I are getting married in a week. We need to start our lives together. We need space for a family. You have 3 bedrooms here that you don't even use." The anger started as a small flame in my chest. I use every room in this apartment. The guest room is where my brother stays when he visits. The other bedroom has my wife's things, my memories. "Exactly," Veronica said, like I'd just proven her point. "You're living in the past, surrounded by a dead woman's belongings. It's not healthy, Robert. You need to move forward." The flame grew hotter. "Don't you dare speak about my wife that way." "We're not trying to upset you," Thomas said quickly. "We just think that maybe, if you really thought about it, you'd see that this makes sense. Veronica and I could take over the apartment. You could find a nice 1-bedroom somewhere quieter. We'd help you move. We'd visit all the time." I stood up, my hands shaking. "This is my home. I worked 3 decades as an engineer. Double shifts, weekend projects, consulting jobs. I saved every penny I could. My wife and I bought this apartment together. We raised you here, Thomas. Your first steps were in that hallway. Your mother taught you to read at that dining table. Every single thing in this apartment is here because I earned it." "You're being selfish," Veronica snapped, her composure cracking. "You have all this space, and you won't even consider sharing it with your own son. What kind of father does that?" "The kind who worked too hard to give it all away," I shot back. "We're not asking you to give it away," Thomas said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We're asking you to be reasonable, to think about what's best for everyone. What's best for me is keeping my home," I said firmly. "The answer is no. It will always be no." Veronica's face flushed red. "You're a stubborn old man who can't stand the thought of your son being happy. You want to control him forever, keep him dependent on you. That's what this is really about." "Get out," I said quietly. "Dad," Thomas started. "No," I said louder. "Get out of my home, both of you." Veronica grabbed her bag, shoving the brochures back inside. "You're making a huge mistake. Thomas, are you going to let him talk to me like this?" Thomas looked between us, his face pale and miserable. "Dad, please, can't we just talk about this calmly? I've been calm for weeks, while you two have been plotting to take my home. I've listened to hints and suggestions and now demands. I'm done being calm. This conversation is over. Veronica stormed toward the door. Fine, be alone in your precious apartment. See if we care. She yanked the door open and stalked out. Thomas lingered for a moment. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't think she'd... You didn't think she'd what? Say what you've both been planning? Thomas, you stood there and told me I should give up my home. You brought printed articles to convince me to leave. You're not sorry about what she said. You're sorry she said it so directly. His eyes filled with tears, but he didn't argue. He just turned and followed his fiancée out. I closed the door and leaned against it, my whole body shaking. The chicken grew cold on the counter. The table stayed set for 3 people who would never eat together. I sat in my car in the hotel parking lot, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. My face throbbed where Veronica had hit me. I could feel the heat radiating from my cheek, and I knew it would bruise by morning. Through the windshield, I could see people moving past the hotel windows. The reception was still going on. The music was still playing. Life was continuing as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just been humiliated and assaulted in front of everyone I knew. I reached into my jacket pocket with trembling fingers and pulled out the business card I'd placed there 3 days ago. The edges were worn soft from age, but the name was still clear. Henry Castellanos, attorney at law. Below it, a phone number I'd kept memorized for 7 years, just in case. I dialed before I could talk myself out of it. 3 rings. Then a deep, familiar voice answered. Robert? Is that you? Just hearing him say my name made my eyes fill with tears. Henry, I need you. It's time. The Grand Meridian Hotel, Ballroom B. Please hurry. There was a pause, and I could almost hear him processing the tone in my voice. The shake I couldn't hide. I'm 20 minutes away. Don't worry. This ends today. I ended the call and sat back in my seat, trying to steady my breathing. 20 minutes. I could survive 20 more minutes. Inside the ballroom, I imagined chaos was unfolding. My brother had followed me out briefly, checking if I was okay, but I'd sent him back in. I need you to be my eyes in there, I'd told him. Tell me everything that happens. He gripped my shoulder firmly and returned to the reception. Now my phone buzzed with his texts coming through one after another. Veronica is trying to act like nothing happened. She's cutting the cake. Some guests are leaving. The Mitchells just walked out. Frank from your old company told Veronica she should be ashamed. Thomas is just standing there like a statue. He looks sick. I confronted her, told her she's a manipulative woman with no decency. She tried to walk away from me, but I followed her. People are watching. I smiled grimly at that last message. My brother had never been one to stay quiet when someone he loved was hurt. My phone rang. Henry, I'm 15 minutes out. Robert, I need to know exactly what happened. I told him everything. The demand for keys, the public humiliation, the slap. My voice stayed steady until I got to the part about Thomas standing there, doing nothing, and then it cracked. He just watched Henry. My son just watched her do it. I know, Henry said gently. I know it hurts, but we're going to handle this. I'm bringing Rebecca, my associate. She has all the documents we discussed, and I've arranged for hotel security to meet us there. Are you ready for this? Was I ready? I touched my swollen cheek and thought about the apartment I'd fought so hard for, the life I'd built, the dignity I deserved. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Good. I need you to come back inside. Wait for me in the lobby. Don't go into the ballroom yet. Can you do that? I can do that. I got out of the car, checked my reflection in the side mirror, and walked back toward the hotel entrance. My legs felt steadier now. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something harder. Determination. The lobby was quiet, elegant, with soft music playing from hidden speakers. I sat in a chair near the elevators and watched the numbers above the doors. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. My phone buzzed again. Henry, 5 minutes out. Prepare yourself. What I'm bringing will change everything. I took a deep breath and stood up. Whatever was about to happen, I wouldn't face it sitting down. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Henry stepped out, and just seeing him made something tight in my chest loosen. He was 68 now, his hair silver, but his presence was as commanding as ever. He wore a dark suit and carried a leather briefcase that I knew contained documents that would shift the power back into my hands. Behind him was a young woman in professional attire, carrying folders, and beside her, a hotel security officer in uniform. Henry walked directly to me and placed a firm hand on my shoulder. His eyes took in my swollen cheek, and his jaw tightened. "Let's go settle this once and for all," he said quietly. We walked together across the lobby. The ballroom doors were just ahead. I could hear the music, the voices, the sounds of a celebration that had gone terribly wrong. Henry pushed open the doors. The music stopped. Every head in the room turned toward us, and I walked back in with my head held high. The ballroom fell silent as we entered. Henry's shoes clicked against the marble floor with each deliberate step. Behind us, Rebecca and the security officer fanned out slightly, a quiet show of authority that made several guests step back. Thomas stood frozen near the cake table, his face the color of old paper. Veronica was mid-laugh with a group of her friends, but the sound died in her throat when she saw us approaching. Her eyes darted from me to Henry to the security officer, and I watched her brain working, trying to figure out who these people were and what power they held. "Good evening, everyone," Henry said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "My name is Henry Castellanos. I'm Mr. Roberts' attorney and family advocate. I apologize for interrupting this celebration, but a serious matter needs to be addressed immediately." Veronica forced a laugh. "Thomas, who is this man? What's going on?" But Thomas couldn't answer. He was staring at me, at my swollen cheek, and I saw the realization finally hitting him. What he'd allowed to happen, what he'd witnessed and done nothing to stop. Henry turned to face Veronica directly. "I've been informed that you publicly demanded Mr. Robert surrender his apartment keys, and when he refused, you physically assaulted him in front of these witnesses. Is this correct?" "That's not," Veronica started, but my brother's voice cut through from across the room. "I saw it." She slapped Robert so hard, his cufflink flew off. "We all saw it," Frank added, stepping forward. "It was disgraceful behavior." Other voices joined in, confirming the story. Veronica's face shifted from confusion to anger to something approaching fear as she realized how many people had witnessed her loss of control. Henry nodded to Rebecca, who opened one of her folders with crisp efficiency. "Mr. Robert asked me to prepare several documents in advance, in case this situation escalated, as he feared it might." He pulled out the first set of papers. "This is a formal request for a restraining order against you, Veronica, citing repeated harassment, intimidation, and physical assault witnessed by over 100 people in this room." Veronica's mouth fell open. "You can't." "Second," Henry continued, ignoring her, "a notarized affidavit signed by Mr. Speed," end quote. "Robert, 3 days ago, stating that the apartment at 447 Riverside Drive is his sole property, purchased with his own funds, and the life insurance settlement from his late wife. He has no legal obligation to transfer it to anyone, and any further attempts to coerce him will result in legal action." Thomas made a small, broken sound. I couldn't look at him yet. "And third," Henry said, his voice dropping lower, more serious, "Mr. Robert has added a codicil to his last will and testament. In the event that he experiences continued coercion, manipulation, or threats regarding his property, his entire estate, including the apartment, will be donated to the City Engineering Scholarship Fund upon his passing. His son Thomas will inherit nothing if this behavior continues." The gasps echoed around the room. I heard someone whisper, "Oh my God." Another person said he had to protect himself from his own daughter-in-law. Thomas's face crumpled. He took a step toward me. "Dad, I didn't know she was going to hit you. I swear I didn't know." "But you knew everything else," I said, and my voice came out stronger than I expected. You knew about the demands. You brought those brochures to my home. You stood beside her while she told me to leave the apartment I worked 35 years to afford. You might not have known about the slap, Thomas, but you knew about everything that led up to it. I was wrong, he said, and tears started streaming down his face. I was so wrong, Dad. I let her get in my head. She made it sound so reasonable, like we were helping you. But we weren't helping you. We were trying to take from you. I'm so sorry. He pulled away from Veronica, who tried to grab his arm, and walked toward me. I don't want your apartment. I don't want anything except my father back. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but please. Veronica exploded. Are you kidding me right now? Thomas, we planned this. We need that apartment. You promised me. The mask was completely gone. Everyone in the ballroom saw her for exactly what she was. Ma'am, the security officer said, stepping forward, you need to leave the premises now, or we'll be calling the police to file assault charges. Veronica looked around wildly. Her friends had backed away from her. Guests were staring with open disgust. Even her own parents, sitting in the back corner, stood and walked toward the exit without acknowledging her. This is insane, she screamed. That apartment should be ours. He's just one selfish old man. Leave, Henry said quietly. Now. Veronica grabbed her purse, her hands shaking with rage. She looked at Thomas one last time. You're choosing him over me? On our wedding day? I'm choosing what's right, Thomas said. She ran from the ballroom, her white dress trailing behind her like a broken promise.